So, apparently everybody expects me to have an opinion about this, then. Okay, I think it's one of those instances where something can be both a moment of positive social progress in popular culture and also kind of a goofy, overhyped publicity stunt. I guess it's overall a good idea, but I don't think it's all that big of a deal one way or the other. Does that about cover it? No? Ah, fine.
Comics are weird!
Okay, so just to catch up those of us who have actual lives, for most of the month of May, DC Comics has been intimating that one of their big-name superhero characters was going to come out of the closet as homosexual, and that no, it wasn't going to be the obvious choice with the mountain of historical and continuity precedent, or the choice that would suddenly justify a bunch of terrible jokes you thought were hilariously insightful in middle school. In any case, last week the headlines finally broke and the world learned the shocking truth. The Green Lantern is gay. And then moments later, that same world received the shocking reminder of why it had been far more interested in DC heroes in their cartoon and movie forms for the last few decades. For it turns out that it's not the Green Lantern the vast majority of people have heard of, but rather a different Green Lantern from an alternate universe that very few people actually give a damn about. Okay, we've been over this a few times, but just in case, here it goes again. Deep breath.
When DC Comics got back into the superhero business full-time in the Silver Age, they based the names and powers of certain new characters on the then somewhat forgotten characters of the Golden Age, most prominently the Flash and the Green Lantern. In 1961, a DC writer named Gardner Fox changed the course of comic publishing history with a story called The Flash of Two Worlds, which resolved the continuity flaw of characters like Superman and Batman having always existed while there were apparently two different versions of other characters, by explaining that the adventures of Golden Age DC heroes had actually taken place in an alternate universe called Earth 2. In the 1980s, Crisis on Infinite Earths merged the alternate universes together and folded the alternate versions of the heroes into singular continuities, and then Infinite Crisis broke them up again, and then Countdown happened, and then Final Crisis, and then, oh, who cares?
The point is, it's this guy, Alan Scott, the original Golden Age Green Lantern, who is gay now, not Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern you've probably heard of. Except it's not even the same Alan Scott. Kinda. See, DC is still in the midst of a spectacularly underwhelming universe-wide reboot called the New 52, so this is not the original World War II-era Alan Scott of Earth 2 who's come out, but rather an entirely new Alan Scott from an entirely new version of Earth 2, populated by younger versions of the classical Earth 2 Justice Society characters. An editorial decision I can only assume was undertaken for the same reason that most of the other maddeningly convoluted methods of preserving Earth 2 have been undertaken over the years, namely to make sure that DC artists didn't have to give up drawing Power Girl. So yeah, the real headline on this one is more like, new version of comic book character you've never heard of but shares a name with another you may have, is gay. Obviously not quite as catchy. But okay, all snarking aside, I actually do think this is a mostly positive move on DC's part. Having it be a gay male character is commendable given the medium's penchant for passing off male-targeted quasi-lesbian fan service as sexual diversity. And before anyone asks, no, I'm not talking about Batwoman or Renee Montoya, who are actual good characters. I'm talking more about the fact that, fairly or not, the presence of a gay man feels like more of a sincerely taken creative risk in a medium where, let's be honest, pretty much every female character has been positioned as plausibly bisexual since the mid-1980s. Also, while the fact that it's not the quote-unquote real or original Alan Scott somewhat dulls the actual impact, the fact that there's at least the association with a character in the square-jawed, classically masculine archetype is a welcome act of stereotype subversion. It's a baby step, sure, but it's a step, and more importantly, it's a step in the right direction. I do want to address two little things, though. Every time a fictional character undergoes a race or gender or sexuality change, there's a predictable outcry asking why we can't make new characters for underrepresented groups, rather than mucking around with established ones. And while I'm sympathetic to that idea to a degree when it comes to race and gender, sexuality is a little different. The experience of having one's public persona change in the eyes of peers and even themselves if they hadn't previously identified as gay is a very real part of the LGBTQ experience in modern culture, and as such, having established characters come out makes a certain amount of thematic sense. It's not quite that pronounced in this case, since this is a new incarnation of Alan Scott who is apparently already out in his backstory, but let's just say DC finally decided to pull this particular trigger on, oh, I don't know, Wonder Woman. There'd be a huge fallout from that, and it would be a fallout that a lot of gay and lesbian fans would have been very much able to relate to. I'd also like to answer the folks who will inevitably invoke rhetorical boogeymen like the mythology of affirmative action or political correctness and complaining about forced diversity. The fact is, yeah, popular culture frequently goes eye-rollingly overboard to turn every property into a rainbow coalition, but in my view, this is an often sloppy but very necessary reaction to a real problem. Up until very recently, the popular culture was arranged in such a way as to present a vision of white, male, heterosexual, cisgendered superiority and omnipresence as the human ideal, which contributed tremendously to a self-defeating inferiority complex in people and groups that weren't part of that eminently false ideal. Given that, do I have a problem with enlightened voices in mass media perhaps trying too hard to make up for lost time vis-a-vis diversity in fictional characters? No. No, I do not. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.